From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks very much, Ollie. Yes, Moggy says there'll be plenty of time to debate the ins and outs of proroguing Parliament and the ins and outs of no deal. That's the news today. We won't dwell on so much of that today anyway. This is your Richie Allen Show. How you doing? Are you well? It's Thursday, August 29th, 2019. My name is Richie Allen. You can tweet this programme right now. It's at Richie Allen Show. That's the Twitter handle. Lovely to be with you. It always is. Yeah.
Richie Allen.
Oh yeah, get in there. Get right in there.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, Mark Windows joins the programme a bit later on this hour. Can't wait to speak with him. Terrific broadcaster is Mark. Great researcher and public speaker. And we'll be talking about his public speaking engagements, which are very relevant to many of the subjects that are discussed on this programme. Mark Windows, windowsontheworld.net. Check it out if you haven't before. Top man joins the programme this Thursday. You'll have plenty to say on that. You know how to do that. You know how to reach me. So reach me through Twitter. All right. Ah, well, there you are now. Get rid of the old theme tune there. Yeah. Lovely day, lovely afternoon. I was confronted today. I do get a bit depressed. I'm trying not to, because I'm in good health now. I'm fit and I'm alive and awake and alert and rested. But it's difficult when you walk down the street and you are confronted by people coming towards you on the pavement, you Americanized bastard, Richie, on the footpath, on the path, and they are staring at their phones and walking straight towards you. Zombies, my learned friend Tez Howell calls them. Zombies, phone zombies. It's a horribly depressing thing to see, and I saw quite a lot of that. Hey, before we talk about serious news, let's have some lighter news. Although it's not so light, if you're in the UK today, you might have come across the fact that Asda and Tesco and some other supermarkets have been selling knives to children. Yeah, they've been selling knives to children. Mad, eh? Young children. They were stung. So they were. And, I mean, how does that work? You walk into a supermarket as a child and you've got a debit card. All right, but you look like a child. And you go through the checkout and all your goods are scanned and you are given a price. And then the cashier says, any cash back, meaning that they can give you some cash through your debit card. And you say cash back and you say, no, thanks. And they say, all right, do you want a knife? Do you want a knife, do you? Do you want a knife? So they've been stung. It's a big story, I suppose, not a little story, because knife crime is, well, it's big these days, isn't it, around the country. And Owen Jones, the hysterical little virtue signalling bollocks himself, was allegedly assaulted a couple of weeks ago when I was on holiday. Well, 3 guys have been arrested for it anyway. 3 men have been arrested for allegedly assaulting Owen Jones on Saturday night, Sunday morning, a couple of weeks ago, August 17th. 3 men between 29 and 39 years old were arrested on suspicion of violent disorder and assault occasioning actual bodily harm, according to the Met Police. A lot of Owen Jones's detractors, a lot of his enemies, have pointed out there isn't a mark on the man. But that doesn't mean anything. The men are in custody. They attended a North London police station. Violence and assaulting people, however detestable you might find them, is completely and utterly wrong and unacceptable. It's rotten. Shouldn't happen to anybody, regardless of how much you might personally despise their behaviour. And if they did assault him, well, they're going to pay for it now. And the BBC have said that Jo Brand, the comedian, her joke about throwing battery acid went beyond what was appropriate for a Radio 4 comedy show. That's the ruling anyway. The BBC has partially upheld some complaints about the joke made by Brand on the show Heresy back in June. And they referred to the fact that politicians were hit by milkshakes, and Brand said on the programme, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid? Might be a bit distasteful, but Should she be allowed to say that? Should people like Nigel Farage just suck it up and not melt down as Farage melted down about it when he accused Brand of inciting violence, which is not what she was doing, of course. But anyway, that's the BBC. So that's the light news then. You never know what you're going to get on the Richie Allen Show. That's the light news. William says, are you sure you were on holiday when that thing happened to Owen Jones? Can imagine PC Hopkins, Mr. Allen. Whereabouts were you on Saturday, August 17th? Well, I was nowhere near Owen Jones, I can tell you that. Here's the more important stuff then. A Scottish court is considering a legal attempt to block the suspension of the UK Parliament. 75 parliamentarians are seeking an interim... Oh, God. 75 parliamentarians are going to court. They want a temporary halt on Johnson's move to prorogue Parliament. So they want to temporarily stop Johnson so that it can be discussed and waste even more time. They began this legal action at the Court of Session in Edinburgh last month, but today arguments were heard on this. They are seeking the Scottish legal equivalent of an injunction to stop Parliament being suspended. This is all over the place. Today, the Queen has given permission to Johnson's request to suspend Parliament in September and in October. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has been saying he'll do everything he can to politically stop a Parliament suspension and a no-deal Brexit. You want to hear Corbyn? The opposition leader also said he would table a vote of no confidence at the appropriate time. Here's the bearded wonder, sounding his usual exciting self, Jeremy Corbyn.
We'll be back in Parliament on Tuesday to challenge Boris Johnson on what I think is a smash and grab raid against our democracy, where he's trying to suspend Parliament in order to prevent a serious discussion and a serious debate to prevent a no-deal Brexit. What we're going to do is try to politically stop him on Tuesday with a parliamentary process in order to legislate to prevent a no-deal Brexit, and also to try and prevent him shutting down Parliament during this utterly crucial period. The implications for this country are very, very serious. A no-deal Brexit would mean trade immediately at risk, jobs immediately at risk, Northern Ireland border suddenly reimposed because there would be no deal whatsoever, there would be no backstop of any sort, and he would lead us straight into the arms of Donald Trump and a putative trade arrangement with the United States, which will be very damaging to our economy, and despite what he says, I believe will mean US healthcare corporations lining up to take over our NHS.
US corporations lining up to take over the NHS. Corbyn is wretched, isn't he? Isn't he wretched, Corbyn? What difference does it make if US healthcare companies get a hold of the NHS? It's been privatised under his nose, that awful moron. Under his nose. This year alone, cancer, PET scan, CT scan services in Oxford privatised. Right? This year, 30 contracts worth hundreds of millions of pounds this year have been given to private companies. In 2017 to 2018, nearly £9 billion of the health service budget went to private corporations, which was nearly 10% of the total budget. It's happening anyway, you bearded buffoon. And he's worried about the US pharma and healthcare sector taking over the NHS. Get a grip, you moron. Corbyn, the phony socialist. What else did he say?
NHS.
You spell out the risks, but do you have the time and do you have the legislative options to be able to stop it?
We believe we can do it, otherwise we wouldn't be trying to do it. I had a very constructive meeting with the leaders of all the opposition parties in my office a couple of days ago to go through these, and we're working together to do everything we can to ensure that Parliament is able to assert itself on behalf of the British people to prevent a no-deal exit from the EU.
What about a vote of no confidence? How does that fit into it? Do you need to think about that?
It fits in absolutely with it, of course, and that will be put at the appropriate moment.
Can I ask you finally, just the Labour Party position on a potential second Scottish independence referendum? Seems to have been some change again to the position. Can you spell out exactly what it is you're saying?
Now, socialists, or those who believe they are socialists, in Scotland, listen carefully now, those of you who listen to this programme in Scotland and are committed to hashtag IndieRef2, and I support your right to want to want to gain your independence of the Crown and of the Union. Totally support it, I would, as a socialist. Listen carefully now. What does phony Jeremy say about Labour's position on a Scottish second independence referendum? Jeremy.
I want there to be a Labour government in this country, and I want that Labour government to be able to deliver for the people of Scotland as for the rest of the UK. We'll be investing £70 billion in Scotland, and we will be dealing with all the aftermath of austerity. And therefore, it's not my priority that there should be a Indie referendum in Scotland. I think it would be damaging to the Scottish economy as well, and so we would see it as not a priority for the early part of a Labour government.
Not so.
More flip-flops than Sideshow Bob and Sideshow Mel put together.
Not something you would allow in your formative years, whatever
In
that
the early
means.
years, we would be asking very strongly that this not be put forward as a priority, but instead we work together to improve the economy of the whole of the UK and give that incoming Labour government the chance to deal with the aftermath of 10 years of austerity, the investment that's needed in Scotland, and also crucial issues like universal credit, which is so damaging to the poorest and most vulnerable people all across Scotland.
Wretched, forget about him. Funny, laughable exchange on Talk Radio last night, round about the time that Parliament Square was filling with Remainers, crying into their Kool-Aid. Yeah, where did that come from? Bill O'Reilly, yeah. Around about the time that Remainers were crying into their squishies about Boris Johnson's suspending of Parliament, the former economics editor of Channel 4 News and of Newsnight, a guy called Paul Mason, who's a Labour Party supporter and a Jeremy Corbyn ally, Mason went on to Talk Radio to speak to James Whale. Here's a little bit of light relief for you. Last night around about 8 o'clock, Mason wants more Remoaners on the street. James Whale got tired of him, and it descended into a little bit of silliness, but worth a giggle.
I'm calling for people to go on the streets, like with the poll tax, and stop it. I mean, we stopped the poll tax. I mean, this may be ancient history to a lot of young people, but this was one of the worst taxes where you were taxed for...
Do you know, you're very patronising, Paul. You talk down a lot. I'm sure you don't probably mean to do it, but you do. You do talk now. But you're suggesting...
You're a radio minister. You're being paid for doing this.
But you said the referendum is not a legal thing, but it was handed to them, and that's how our constitution works with precedent. So if it went to court, which is where the president is set, they would probably back that referendum. So it is the British constitution, and it's legal.
The key word that you just came out with, James, there was probably. We don't know. But in any case, the point about British democracy is it sits in Parliament. That's what that weird Gothic building is all about. And there are people
You're doing it again. You're patronising. Listen, you're suggesting people go out on the street and start acting violently.
I think you should come with us as well.
I wouldn't come with you if it was my last breath. You are ridiculous. You are ridiculous. And you're patronising as well.
Thank you for that objective comment. I'm sure your bosses are looking even now at the outcome licence to see whether or not the way you're speaking to me fits what your programme is supposed to do. Now, if you do want to listen to me, I'll tell you what your listeners should be listening to.
I don't want to listen to you. I've curtailed the interview. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mason. I don't like to be threatened on the air either.
Well, he didn't threaten him, really, did he? He just brought up Ofcom. I wonder what Ofcom would think of the way you are treating me during this interview. But Mason is a patronising arse. Mason believes and has said that the referendum result of 2016 doesn't have any basis in law. It has no legality. This is Remainer nonsense, of course. Whale is just as much of an arsehole as well, don't get me wrong, but he cut him off.
I mean, honestly, you know, if you want to have a discussion, we can have a discussion. If you want to have a debate, we can have a debate. But I just don't want to be talked at. I don't do it that way.
Yeah, he doesn't do it. To be honest, as bad as Mason is, Whale lost the argument by kicking him off the programme. Pretty crap. But funny. All good stuff. So, Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew. The prince is on the run, is he? Not really. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, as we know. But Michael McParland, QC, was on Sky News today to talk about the exposure of the Queen's kid. Do you think the Queen refers to Andrew as our kid? I wonder. Does the Queen say to Philip, Philip, where's our kid? Our kid, right? So Andrew What exposure does he have? Michael McParland, QC, knows a lot about this. He was on Sky News today to talk about the exposure of the Queen's kid, Andrew. Don't the Queen's children love the old pedos, don't they? They love the old pedos. They love them. Anyway, McParland QC, Michael McParland, says Andrew should be very worried about David Boyes. And David Boyes, of course, is the lawyer for Virginia Jeffrey. Here is Michael McParland QC, and this is kind of interesting.
Prince Andrew has a far more dangerous adversary in David Boyes than in anything earlier in these allegations which have been floating around for the last 5 years. I think the situation is complicated by the fact that Miss Roberts Jeffrey brought an action previously against Jeffrey Epstein, and in 2014 made allegations in that action that Prince Andrew had relations with her. Now, in 2015, those allegations were struck out of that claim on the grounds that the judge said they were irrelevant and impertinent because Prince Andrew was not a defendant in that action against Jeffrey Epstein. Now, no one's talking about that. I suspect it was settled because Epstein, of course, had the money to buy off anybody. But what David Boyes is now searching for, and you can see in his interview with Amanda Walker there, he's looking for a mechanism whereby he can compel Prince Andrew to give testimony. Now, either that will require him to launch an action against Prince Andrew directly, bringing a civil claim, which will be complicated both by the statute of limitations and by the nature of establishing a cause of action, or else he'll have to put Prince Andrew in the frame for being a relevant witness for another claim on behalf of, if not Miss Roberts, some of his other clients. So it's a very tricky situation for Prince Andrew.
Very tricky situation for Andrew, says McParland QC. I don't know about that. And what about ongoing investigations? Would Andrew be the focus of ongoing investigations? Interesting answer.
There's no suggestion that Prince Andrew is in part of the continuing investigations that the New York criminal authorities are conducting into Epstein's behavior. See, when he died, Epstein was charged with, among other things, with conspiracy for sex trafficking. And the prosecutors have indicated they're continuing that investigation, and there are a number of people in the frame for being co-conspirators, i.e. people who agreed to assist him in sex trafficking of minors across state lines. Now, at present, there's no suggestion that Prince Andrew would have any involvement in that, though the criminal authorities could seek international judicial assistance regarding evidence as to what happened in that mansion and what was going on.
Yeah, but don't hold your breath. He's a member of the royal family. Don't expect him to be travelling across the Atlantic anytime soon to meet with lawyers for victims, let alone prosecutorial or prosecutor lawyers or DAs or whatever. Don't hold your bloody breath there. Interesting stuff nonetheless. Now, vaccines, the measles vaccine is all going tits up here in the UK. Tits up it's going. Not enough babies are getting the vaccine. Not enough babies are getting the vaccine. Here's Kay Burley.
UK is one of 4 countries to have lost its measles-free status. Europe has seen a surge in cases of the virus, with around 90,000 cases reported for the first half of this year, more than in the whole of 2018. The World Health Organization says misinformation about vaccines, which is often shared on social media, is as contagious as the virus itself.
The misinformation is as contagious as the virus itself, says Kay. Contagious is the misinformation. Gets everywhere. Here's intrepid Irish Sky News reporter Enda Brady. He's on the case and fills Kay in as to what's going on.
Well, Kay, we've always known that measles is highly infectious, but it is entirely preventable given the amount of vaccines that are out there, and MMR in particular. So we can take a look at some of the information that has come in today. This is from the European Regional Verification Commission. They say that in 2018, the UK was among 4 member states to lose their status as having eliminated measles. The other 3 were Albania, the Czech Republic and Greece. It's the first time 4 countries have lost such status since this verification process of the 53 member states began 7 years ago.
What? The UK was relegated to Division 2 with Albania, the Czech Republic and the Greeks. We are shit here, huh? We couldn't beat those countries in getting out the vaccines. What about who's doing well? That's a question, isn't it? Who's doing well in dispensing the old vaccines there?
Now, 2 countries are deemed to have interrupted continuous transmission of measles. Belgium for 12 months, Kazakhstan for 24 months.
Belgium and Kazakhstan. We couldn't beat Belgium and Kazakhstan.
So if a country stops seeing continuous transmission of the virus for 36 months, then it achieves the status of having eliminated this disease. Overall, the number of measles cases across Europe has surged. Last year, there were just under 85,000 cases recorded. That number was surpassed within the first half of this year alone, with approximately 90,000 cases recorded. And the World Health Organization has set a global target for MMR vaccinations at 95%. The latest figures for the UK, recorded in 2017, shows uptake at 92%. That's the lowest it's been since 2012, so quite some catching up to do.
What? Quite some catching up to do, he said. Hang on a second, 92% to 95% is not a lot of catching up to do, really. 92% uptake in the UK is alarmingly high, I would say. Anyway, Jesus. What about Kay? What does Kay say? What do you say, Kay? Kay, what do you say?
Yeah, indeed. So, and what are we hearing? As far as NHS England is concerned, obviously they want people to vaccinate their babies as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Get your babies vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a straightforward procedure. The MMR jab is given to a baby just before his or her first birthday, and then a second booster jab just before they start school. So it's a very simple, effective process. But I think what medical experts now will want is social media companies to clamp down on these misinformation campaigns that are out there and are proving so prevalent.
So prevalent, these misinformation campaigns. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer me. What did you just hear there? What was that? Was that a news story, do you think? Was that a news story? Was that a scheduled story in a news script presented by a presenter? Was that news? Do you know what that was? Let me tell you. That was an infomercial. Do you know what that is? Do you know the difference? Not a news story, an infomercial written by the World Health Organization and faxed to the UK media. And all of them, BBC, Channel 4 and ITN, today ran that story using the exact same language. An infomercial. Nobody's dying of the measles. And it's not because of the vaccines. Long before the vaccine was ever introduced, less than 0.001% of children died of measles or were injured by it. It's mad. Not going to say it again. Getting measles, getting chicken pox helps build a robust immune system. You know what's mad? I'm going to tell you a very brief story. It's totally true, this. Friend of mine met myself and the future Mrs. Allen for drinks a couple of weeks ago, an old friend of mine. And he's got a young child. He's got a young baby who's about 7 months old now. 6 months old, in fact, 6 months old. And he came to meet us, and his wife came about 10 or 15 minutes later. She had dropped their child, their lovely child, off with one of the grandparents to give them a chance to go out for a meal and a couple of drinks with me and the future Mrs. Allen. Anyway, we're not long into our first drink when my friend's wife gets a call from Grandad to say the baby's in a bad way, you've got to come back. What's wrong, says the future Mrs. Allen. And we were told that since the baby had the latest round of vaccines, only a few days before, he'd been in a very bad way. He'd been running a high temperature. He was feverish, very, very cranky, and was screaming a lot. Right, says I. What's going on? How many vaccines? What happened? And he got the 12-week vaccine schedule, all in the one day, the baby. And he got, no he didn't, he got the 16-week schedule, that's what he got, 16-week schedule. And he got 6-in-1 vaccine. He got the third dose of 6-in-1 vaccine. He'd already had that at 12 weeks and at 8 weeks. So on one day, a few weeks back, he got the 6-in-1 vaccine, the third dose of that. He got the PCV pneumococcal vaccine, the second dose. And he got the meningitis B vaccine, the second dose. And the child was screaming for several days. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. But it's not good, I don't think. And in preparation for the show today, not that I'm going to dwell on this very long, to be honest, I looked at the schedule of vaccines for UK-based babies, and it is fucking insane. Insane. 8 weeks old. The child is... At 8 weeks, my God, I've seen 8-week-old children. There's nothing of them in it. You can hold them in one hand. They get the 6-in-1, the PCV, the RV, the rotavirus, and the MenB. 12 weeks, the 6-in-1 and the RV. 16 weeks, 6-in-1 again, the PCV and the meningitis B. And after they're a year old, they get the HIV meningitis C vaccine, single jab, which contains other vaccines. They get the MMR, the PCV again, and the meningitis B. A toxic tidal wave of shit that must overwhelm the underdeveloped immune system of the baby. And Sky News today, and the BBC today, and Channel 4 today, and ITN today are running effing infomercials for the World Health Organization. And they are bitching about, on behalf of the World Health Organization, skeptics and genuinely concerned people who exist in the world who are asking about vaccine safety and vaccine efficiency or efficacy. Absent from these infomercials, of course, is right of reply to the many doctors, qualified GPs, of course, some of whom have been on this program, the many doctors. Absent from these infomercials are doctors who say we should not be giving so many vaccines. Many of these doctors are not anti-vaccine. As you've heard on this program, they said, we believe that maybe one vaccine, right? Some doctors have said to me, maybe TB, maybe polio, but all this other stuff is crazy. Absent from the infomercials today, as usual, is right of reply to the other side. This is the Richie Allen Show, by the way. Broadcasting live on Fab Radio 2, triggerwarning.tv, TuneIn Radio, of course, and richieallen.co.uk. It is Thursday, August 29th, 2019. I am Richie Allen. Mark Windows joins the programme live in a couple of minutes' time. Taking us to Mark, terrific tune from Marvin Gaye. I heard it through the grapevine. Welcome to the show. Marvin Gaye, 26 minutes, is it 27 minutes to the top of the hour? It is Thursday's programme. It's been a good week to be back. Lots going on, so there is. Just to let you know, Monday to Thursday, live at 5 o'clock, the Richie Allen Show. Sunday morning at 11 a.m. UK time, of course. It's 5 live radio shows a week. And Monday to Thursday at 9:30 in the AM, it's me and you doing the newspaper review on YouTube at youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. That's youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. Let me introduce my guest today. And I love having him on. Before we say a quick hello to him, and we'll say more than a quick hello to him, before we do say hello to him, let me read this from the BBC today. This is hugely important. I don't think there's any more important story than this now. This on bbc.co.uk today, and it got a lot of coverage this morning on the mid-morning news shows on television and UK radio. Here it is. Climate change. Big lifestyle changes are needed to cut emissions. Big lifestyle changes are needed to cut emissions. This is according to Professor Sir Ian Boyd. Okay? And he's the government's chief environment scientist. And he says that people must use less transport, must eat less red meat, and must buy fewer clothes if the UK is to virtually halt greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. He gave an interview to the BBC, and he warned that persuasive political leadership was needed to carry the public through the challenge. He declined to comment on whether Boris Johnson, the current Prime Minister, would be able to deliver that leadership. And there was a lot of talk today about electric cars, but also driving taxes up on motor cars that use petrol and diesel to force people out of them and back into public transport and all the rest of it. Transformative for the human experience. This is all about transforming the human experience. Now, amongst many issues, my guest today is hugely interested in this, and he's taking around the country this year The Bigger Picture, which is a series of talks featuring himself, Sandy Adams, and the meteorologist Piers Corbyn, the scientist Piers Corbyn. It's a terrific series of talks. I can't recommend strongly enough that if it's within your reach, and it is travelling around the country, do check it out, The Bigger Picture. You can find tickets for it at windowsontheworld.net. That's windowsontheworld.net. You can also find tickets for it at Eventbrite, but go to windowsontheworld.net. It's very important. I haven't seen it myself yet. I'm hoping to catch it when it's in my neck of the woods. Let's welcome back to the programme my old friend Mark Windows. Mark, welcome back. How you doing?
Very well, Richie.
Good to have you on, my friend. So what do you make it? I mean, I'm not doing, I'm not kind of egging the pudding or over-egging the pudding when I say this issue is as prescient, as important an issue for us as any other. This agenda to enforce upon us big lifestyle changes in order to cut CO2 emissions. We will talk about your talks, we'll talk about where they're going to be and all of that a bit later on. What do you make of this from the BBC today? I suppose it comes as no surprise to you.
Well, Rich, we have this in the mainstream every single day of the week. The Guardian is particularly fond of logical fallacies and connecting everything to climate change. Now, all of this came out of the Rio Earth Summit in '92. We can go over some of those details today if you want, but there's nothing new here. And of course, the people who are spouting this stuff know nothing about what this is really essentially about. And that is a huge problem.
You're right to say it isn't new. Of course, it does go back to 1992. It's important now because now it seems like they're ready to start introducing great swathes of it. If you get my drift, I think that's what's important. It's like now they're ready to say, right, we're going to force it on you. Here it comes. It's imminent, is what I think, Mark.
Yes, there's an absolute assault at the moment, and it's every single day. I get a news feed from Google on my smartphone, which I carry around, unfortunately. And on there, I just get a constant barrage of groundless speculation and climate scare stories, all linked into Agenda 2030. And we have this situation where none of the people who are spouting this stuff know anything about the origins or what this is really about.
Do you want to give our listeners a kind of a Cliff Note version? No better man than you to do it. A kind of a brief summary of where it originally came from and what it's really about.
Well, it actually came out of a document called Our Common Future in 1987. And it was put together by Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was the Prime Minister of Norway at the time and also head of the World Communist Party. Herself, Stephen Rockefeller, and Evelinda Rothschild, and a billionaire oil financer called Maurice Strong got together and decided that the old world system wasn't working. And it took to this idea of destroying the Western civilization and Western industrialism with a thing called the Fourth World, which is what we are hearing from a certain protest group, alleged protest group, the Fourth Global Revolution. And they're talking about basically the same things as were talked about from 1987 onwards, where this term called sustainable development came from. It actually came out of a document called Our Common Future. Now, Our Common Future had some very interesting quotes in it. It said there, basically, Earthwatch, the United Nations program, should be the center of leadership to the UN system on risk assessment. A new international program for cooperation among largely non-governmental organizations, scientific bodies, and industry groups should therefore be established for this purpose. Now, that became the IPCC. This institution that they were going to put together is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which actually enforces all of these globalist policies for deindustrialization and rationing of everything onto the Western world. And of course, it goes on and on and on with quotes about the World Bank. The World Bank is presently reorientating its programs towards greater environmental concerns. This should be accompanied by a fundamental commitment to sustainable development by the bank. Now, in a conference this year called the World Government Summit, which 1,200 people on YouTube have watched, Richie. Now, our numbers dwarf this video, and it's called Enablers of Agenda 2030. And I've actually written down quotes from it, and it's shocking what these people are saying. But how come it is that people in the mainstream and BBC and academics and a whole raft of people who are termed useful idiots who are in this administration system will not talk about it, don't know anything about it, and if it's mentioned, they say it's a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory? It's because of the way that society's been re-engineered. And yes, it all went up to the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, where these billionaires got together and decided that we were to deindustrialize the West. And it's basically a business plan for the control and management of all infrastructure, which is land, property, belief, all property assets and anything which affects the livelihood of people. And the climate change agenda actually came from a Club of Rome document called the First Global Revolution. And it was decided that global warming would fit the bill, and the new enemy of humanity would be humanity itself. And the present UN plan came from a document, yes, called Our Common Future in 1987. So all of this is documented, and any member of the public or any member of the press can go and read it. It's all online.
Hugely important there. I want to just endorse what Mark said there, because I'll be expected to challenge him on what he's just said, but I won't, because I know it to be true. Our Common Future, 1987, the Rothschild, Rockefeller, attacking industrialization, introducing terminology like sustainable development. Everything he's telling you is true. The Rio Earth Summit, what came out of that, he's absolutely bang on. The Club of Rome and the introduction of the idea of climate change, protecting man from himself, because man could destroy the world and destroy the planet. All of this is absolutely true, and it bewilders people as to why on BBC, ITV Channel 4, Fox, CNN, why nobody takes this on, particularly those, and you made a very good point there, particularly those who are seemingly against the CO2 climate change theory. That's the frustrating thing. There are commentators who go and speak on Fox, they go and speak on other networks, and they say that the CO2 theory is baloney, which it is, but yet they don't go down the rabbit hole that you've just gone down, Mark, even though that information is in the public domain. That's really frustrating, right?
It is, Richie. And the other thing about it, it's not a rabbit hole. It's all there.
It's all there, yeah.
This video, Enablers of Agenda 2030, the World Government Summit happened in Dubai in February this year. I've taken apart what those people said in that video. Now, these are world leaders. These are people who are making assumptions basically on your behalf. And when you look at what they're saying, it's absolutely totalitarian and nothing will be left out. Or as the UNESCO say, and the UN, no one will be left behind. But let's have a look at what this World Government Summit was all about. The World Government Summit is a global platform dedicated to shaping the future of governments worldwide. Now, if that doesn't tell you anything, then nothing will, because the point is that people are thinking that national governments matter. They don't in this system. This is a global governance system, and it's nothing to do with individual governments. It goes above individual government because it came through legislation from the Kyoto Protocols and then the Paris Climate Agreement. But previously, it was there as Agenda 21 in the year 2000. Every council in the UK and indeed around the world implemented these policies on the back of sustainable development, which, according to one of the contributors of this World Government Summit, can mean everything and nothing. In other words, it means anything that they want to actually define as sustainable development.
Let me ask you this, Mark. Sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask you this. Let me throw this in there. Is the European Union and the how do I say it? Is an enduring European Union important to this whole agenda? Is it important to these people that the European Union not only holds together but becomes even stronger? Would you say?
Yes. Remote authority is the key to global governance, unstructured governance. Now, the point is, we have people in Brussels making legislation on our behalf, and we have no say in the matter. Therefore, that is remote governance. Now, yes, the EU has always been a part of the global governance strategy. So anything that gets in the way of that is a problem. Brexit is definitely a problem. And that is why we are not going to be allowed to leave the European Union. We may have Brexit in name only, but they're going to do anything they can. And there is a chance now, because people have realised that their votes, their opinions, don't mean anything. They don't mean anything to the government. And Theresa May signed off all of this global governance just before she left. In other words, the enablers of the Global Action Plan and Agenda 2030 got their way. She agreed to it all to reduce our carbon footprints and go net zero by 2050, which of course means the extinction of the human race to anybody who's got a functioning brain cell.
Why? How does it mean? It's ridiculous. I agree with you. We don't need to reduce CO2 emissions. There was a time in human history, there was a time in pre-industrial history when there was far more CO2 in the atmosphere than there is now. This is a fact. It's a historic fact. CO2 is not changing our climate. It's not putting us in danger. I totally agree with that. But even if we agree that it's crazy and the agenda is very sinister, what makes you think that if they hit net zero carbon emissions, that it would mean the end of us? Why do you say that?
Well, because we are carbon. And the whole point of it is that written into these documents is the global depopulation plan. Now, by 2050, the UN want 2/3 of the world's population living in smart cities. Now, the problem is that they're not going to be able to fit everyone into smart cities. So a global depopulation agenda has been talked about for a very long time. Of course, you had people like Aldous Huxley referring to it. But when you're talking about net zero carbon emissions, that really is what it means. It can't mean anything else. And also, if you're looking at net zero, well, that means no vehicles. So that means that everybody will be on public transport, which is impossible. So in other words, where are all those people in country areas and outside cities going to go? Where are they going to go? They won't have any choice.
They won't have any choice. Mark Windows is our guest. Mark's website is windowsontheworld.net, and he's presenting with Sandi Adams and Piers Corbyn a talk called The Bigger Picture, and they're taking that around the country. And you really need to know this stuff. And they present it brilliantly. So check it out. If it's somewhere where you can get to, and even if it's not somewhere where you can get to, make an effort and go and check it out. The tickets can be bought through Mark's website. The links are there, windowsontheworld.net or Eventbrite. You're taking this around the country. What sort of reaction are you getting, Mark? Because this is stark stuff. This is stuff that people don't really want to hear. I imagine you're being met with all sorts of reactions to this news.
Well, in this post-truth world where belief and opinion are basically opposing all fact, you do get some resistance. But the point is that these are just facts. These are things anyone can look up. So there's no need for any resistance to fact. It's just that people have been mentored into this way of thinking. And it's actually called the fourth world is the wilderness of the mind. And it's the world wilderness, which means a boundaryless planet with no countries, no thoughts, and a hive mind consensus, which is about mentoring people into having no opinions and no beliefs, apart from belief in the Mother Earth, which is the Gaia religion. So all of this stuff is very well explained in the talks and where it came from. And what people have a problem with is, for instance, I was doing a talk in Pembrokeshire on an organic farm last week, and some of the people in there, when I got to a slide of David Attenborough, who I called David Actorbore, because that's what he is, he's boring and he's an actor and he reads scripts, then one of them said, that's a step too far. Now, it was a step too far because he'd been mentored into thinking that David Attenborough was some kind of knowledgeable person who was an environmentalist. No, he's an actor who read the script. And he has documentaries made by documentary makers who have a remit to actually pursue an agenda for the BBC. So these aren't factual documentaries. And that was completely uncovered with climate change, the facts, and now he's going to go on about the extinction of species on the planet. But the point is that this is so far into people's belief system that it becomes incredibly difficult for them to think outside of it, which is quite worrying, because this is how all totalitarian governments actually took over.
One of the things that you've brought up there is hugely important, I think. And it's great to have you back talking about this, because it's huge. This is massive. You know, we don't get any more stark, as I said a minute ago, than this. I think they've been very clever in blending genuine environmental concerns and blurring the lines between environmental destruction and climate change. Do you go along with that? Because we know that plastic in the oceans is dreadful for marine life. Of course it is. It's rotten. We know that destroying great swathes of the rainforest is rotten. We know this. We know that fracking is horrendous. But haven't they done very well to make people confused, you know, and to link those issues to climate change, when in fact, you know, polluting the ocean and killing fish isn't, you know, the same thing as CO2 causing climate change. I think you know what I mean. They've blended these issues to confuse people, and people can't differentiate between them. What do you think?
Yes, weather, pollution and climate have all been lumped together when they're all different things. So, of course, we need to stop polluting. That's a given. That's obvious. But this agenda is not about stopping pollution. It never was. And if you go back to the Rio Earth Summit of 92, and you can look up on YouTube, there's still a video by a fella called George Hunt, who was there, who was a businessman, who had a sustainable business. And he couldn't believe what he was hearing, because it was known at the time that renewables were being made to fail. That is why the future will be power cuts and restriction and rationing of all energy. That was the whole point of it in the first place. It's basically a new global management concept which revolves around artificial scarcity and the fear of an impending catastrophe, which is climate change. Now, this impending catastrophe has never happened and will never happen, because the information that the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, give out is based on models and projections which have never come true and have proved to be inaccurate and have proved to be fraudulent. So none of this matters to the people at the top, because they know that 90% of the population will believe it, and all of these so-called outliers can be silenced by the 90%. That's what this is about. The wilderness of the mind is for the people who've lost their minds, and that's where we are at the moment. As you've said, we're in a post-truth, and I've said we're in a post-truth world, right? We know that by looking at the standard of so-called journalism. There are no journalists left. There are PR agencies putting out propaganda pieces
no dissent
on the back of what this is all about, which is this new template for global governance. It's very simple. It's just a management concept, really.
And there's no dissent, as you pointed out. Anybody who wants to look at that, just look at the measles vaccine stories in the UK press today. It isn't a story. It isn't a news story. It's an infomercial for the World Health Organization. It's very distressing for anybody who's worked in the media. And Mark's a journalist. He knows this. You know, we know what's going on when we see a story like that. Mark Windows is our guest, windowsontheworld.net. Here's the $64 million question. If at some stage in the near future, and I believe you are right, I believe you are 100% right, that they will introduce rationing, they will say you can't eat so much red meat, you can't use so much power. Will people at that stage have been so bewitched by these nonsense stories that they will just accept it? Or will there be a groundswell of opposition to it from people who say, hang on a second, this really is Orwellian, this really is Huxley-esque? What do you think, Mark? Will people have been so programmed by then that they will willingly accept being told how to heat your house, what temperature to heat it at, where you can drive, where you can't drive? Will they go along with it?
Well, it looks as though they are doing at the moment, because this globalist-backed anti-globalist group. Now, we have to remember that the globalists need the anti-globalists to implement their policies. So the globalists steer the protests of the anti-globalists. It's called a synthesis. you need a thesis, an antithesis, which creates the synthesis. This is at the back of all of these concepts, including Freemasonry, which is the blending of fire and water, the sons of Cain ruling over the sons of Seth and the sons of Abel as an administrative system, which means that you've got 2/3 of the system are administrators, and 1/3 of them actually know something of what's going on, but a tiny few know exactly what's going on. And that's what this is all about. And it's very, very difficult to get that over to the public. And I actually had a very rare excursion onto Facebook today, and somebody asked me the questions like, well, who's doing it? What's doing it? Why is it a world government? Well, all of this stuff I explained in one paragraph. Now, the point is that when you explain these things very, very simply, there's often no response because the public are now mentored into using emotion, belief, logical fallacies, which are unsubstantiated arguments, and ad hominems. And after that, they block it out, or they literally block you on Facebook or Twitter. So there's this cognitive dissonance going on, which has been created. And that's the whole problem, because when you get this globalist group like Extinction Rebellion and people think it's a protest group, you have a problem, because what you're doing is you're creating another divide and rule strategy. In other words, it's the right against the left, which we know doesn't exist. The agenda goes down the middle. It's the globalists versus the anti-globalists. Well, you've got Extinction Rebellion, which is the blending of the two, where it all comes together. So until the public see beyond this, they will not make any progress into what this is really about, because this is just a management concept for the world. It's like the world is being run as a very efficient business. That's all it is. Look at any corporation. Look at one of these ruthless corporations that exploit workers. That's basically the template for this, but on the back of the workers saving the world. And they're going to be taxed to death, and population is going to be reduced because everyone thinks it's a good idea. There's so many people, younger people especially, who now believe that there are too many people on the world because they're told it every day of the week. And that is a huge problem, because you now have mentoring programs of teachers who are implementing climate change agenda into schools, and they're being trained by the UN to do it. Now, these people have not one brain cell between them because they have no cognitive abilities. And I'm not kind of over-exaggerating here, because this comes to a point where debate finishes. And these people generally who have been mentored into this program, which is an awful lot of them, cannot think outside of it. And that was the plan in the first place, what I was saying at the beginning of the show. In other words, the wilderness of the mind, the lostness of the mind. And that's exactly what Extinction Rebellion are promoting by promoting psychedelics, because this was said in 92 that basically it was going to be enforced through drugs and belief in the new Gaia religion, which is the worship of the earth. But it's not actually the worship of the earth. It's a corporation actually imposing a strategy. That's all it is.
That's all it is. Mark Windows is our guest. WindowsOnTheWorld.net. I'd love to argue with Mark. I'd love to get stuck into him, but I can't. It would be a waste of time, because no, but I do. Look, it's your job to play devil's advocate and to put the other side of it. But I can't do it. You know, I can't do that, because it's true. This is happening. It's not a joke. You mentioned schools there. I think having a go, you haven't done to your credit, but having a go at Greta Thunberg is missing the point. You've made a very good point. This is a girl who's being used by very powerful people, but she's a girl who's genuine in terms of she believes what she is saying, because, as you quite rightly said, it's been drilled into her not 24/7, but in every waking hour for a long time. And it has introduced a kind of a frantic kind of anxiety, almost like a mania, into many young children. I hate to say young children, we're not old, but youngsters who do believe this. And Greta is going around the world, and those who see through the CO2 climate farce, which it is, are, going after this young woman. But she's just a symptom of it, really. Mark, what have you made of her rise to prominence? I did see a guy from GQ magazine on Sky News today whose name was, if I can bring it up there, because I don't want to not, Dylan Jones, the editor of GQ, was on every channel today saying Greta would be given an award by GQ because she's been a big game changer. What have you made of that phenomenon?
Well, this is quite interesting because what they've done, again, a very clever divide and rule strategy. We have to remember that Greta Thunberg has been told what to say. She has no qualifications. She has no mind of her own. Now, that's not to her detriment, but it's a reflection of the people who are using her. Because what you've also got here is a girl of 16, nearly 17, who looks about 13. So she's not a child. I left school at 16 and I was expected to be able to know things. Now, this poor child has been worried and implanted with this apocalyptic belief system, which because of her autism and the way that she perceives the world in this very closed off way, that she absolutely
very real to her. Yeah.
Happen.
Yeah, you're making a great point. It's very real to her.
Yeah.
No, sorry, mate. I was
just
children,
Richie, propaganda tools to basically guilt trip and take over their parents and get people to inform on their parents is a very old Soviet technique, and it's come out of the old communist system. But what they've done here is they've kind of jazzed it up a bit and made it look a little bit more kind of sustainable. So they use the child as a weapon of distraction, and they make the critics of the enforced agenda sort of appear to look as if they are attacking the child. Now, the point is that you get these stupid people who scribble in these newspapers who say that they're attacking Greta Thunberg because they're white middle-aged men and they hate her. No, it's got nothing to do with her. So again, this is another logical fallacy that they're bringing in. It's a false argument. No, it's once you say, well, she's a child, she doesn't know what she's talking about, then you're attacking her. No, you're not. You're actually looking objectively at the facts. Now, the thing is that the child then becomes messianic, which is what's happened to her. If you look at the way she's changed, she's now looking more and more messianic, and she's becoming increasingly obsessed and basically like a mini dictator. And she's now telling the adult world what to do. Now, this is classic Soviet-style KGB propaganda. And the agenda then takes over all narratives, and the child will be used only until signs of mental illness and breakdown appear. And that's the cruel thing that's going on here, because at some point she'll have to disappear because this is going to take a toll on her. And I don't think that she's cut out to handle it. Her parents are from a show business background. Her mother's an opera singer. Her father's an actor. They're both very brainwashed. And also, when you look at the background of her larger family, extended family, the whole greenhouse effect was actually proposed by one of her distant relatives. You can look all that up.
Is that right? Is that right, Mark? Can I jump in there because I didn't know that? That's an amazing coincidence then. One of her relatives is somebody who was involved in proposing the greenhouse gas theory. Is that right?
The basic CO2 theory. You can look it up. I mean, we did a show on it some time ago, but as you and I know, things are moving so fast that you can't possibly absorb all this information at the moment.
Wow, if that's real. I mean, I do catch a lot of your shows, as you well know. I didn't catch that. That's if there's any truth in that, and I know you wouldn't put it out there unless you believed it to be true.
It's not even that important because it's the propaganda that's the issue. It's not even about is this science or is it not science? We're not talking about science here. We're talking about the use of propaganda. Is propaganda working? Yes, it is. The whole thing is absurdly ludicrous, as you know, because by sailing to New York, 5 people had to fly back from New York. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is an absolute joke. And of course, from 92 onwards, that when the Rio Earth Summit happened, all of these implementations have been going on. So there's been several of these puppets. The UN have always used children to try and frighten the public. But now it's become a much more global scale, and it's become a much more desperate scale because obviously the World Bank and the UN and all of the billionaires who have basically put this together over the years, they want a result now. They wanted to take over the infrastructure of everything that affected the livelihood of all people. And by 2002, they had the World Bank on board. They didn't need a conversation bank which was originally what they were talking about, because every bank's become a conservation bank. Because if the bank's not a conservation bank, then it's collapsed. And of course, the whole point of this is poverty for all. And yes, people are buying into it because it's got this kind of stupid soundbite glamour to it, which has no substance at all.
And there's a couple of issues coming out of that. I'll come back to banking in a minute because it's hugely important. But before banking, you talked there about celebrities and sportsmen and women, anybody who's famous kind of jumping on board. I think it's getting, I mean, it's religious by nature, by its nature. I think it's getting to the point now where people are almost scared, almost in the same way that people are scared of talking about Israel or talking about anti-Semitism, you know, lest they be accused of being anti-Semitic or hating Israel. With this whole climate thing, I see people in the public eye almost rushing to virtue signal their support for this crazy agenda, lest they be accused of not supporting it, if you get what I mean. It's getting to that stage, and maybe somewhere down the line the term, because I've already heard the term quite a bit in the last couple of years, climate change denier. Maybe in the next few years a climate change denier will be taken more seriously. Listeners have been asking me to put to you, where do you see that going? Like denying climate change, might we see some sort of social crediting system in the near future where somebody who denies climate change might be, I don't know, might be somehow punished in some way, socially punished for being a climate change denier? What do you think? Or is that a step too far, Mark?
I don't think it's a step too far. I think it's a step in the direction that they want to go, and it's already here. Because if you look at how derided journalists who go against this are by these nasty, insidious people who have been mentored into this. And I don't say that lightly, because the use of ad hominems against the person, rather than looking at the facts that they presented, is the norm. It's not the exception. So when you take that up a step further, of course, and even if you go up against a local council,
which you've done,
they will come in a very draconian way. And I know this from experience because I've been taking them on for years, because as you rightly said a while ago, all of this stuff from global to local, it's at local where it actually really happens. But people don't know where it's coming from. They think it's coming from the council. These people on your local council have got no idea where this is from. They can't stop it because they have no reference to it, even though they implement it. So, yes, it's a hive mind consensus. It's the lostness of the mind. It's the end of all reason. This was what was planned. And the Fourth World Wilderness Conference is next year. And that's a land grab of 50% of the planet. They're already talking about privatizing the oceans. So, yes, when there's this much money at stake and when there's this much of a totalitarian agenda, so it's going to be no different in a way than Bolshevism, except maybe it's going to be that people are just cut out of the system and silently disappear, which is what Aldous Huxley predicted, or there's going to be a mass culling. Now, people don't want to hear that, but it's happened before. It's not the exception to history if you go back far enough. It's actually the norm.
WindowsOnTheWorld.net, Mark Windows is our guest. I'm going to read a few tweets here, and we'll talk a bit about getting countries into debt, which I think might very well be a big a big pillar of this agenda. And Faisal tweets, you can't blame a child who is only doing what the adults around her are telling her to do to help save the world. The adults pushing Greta Thunberg into the firing line, to plug up the lack of actual scientific evidence. They are the real monsters. And Faisal is right, we would agree with that. Let me read a few more and then you come back in, Mark. Mad Monk tweets, Greta is is a great propaganda tool for the youth, just like McDonald's, Disney and most phone companies. Program the young masses and they will follow the rest of their lives. The young are the future, says Mad Monk. And Sean Hinchcliffe tweets, if needs be, I'll return to a hunter-gatherer before I conform. Mark is right, as Greta is being manipulated by the elite, and I'm sure her parents are doing it for money. Because of her autism, she can't see what's happening to her. My autistic son, says Sean, is the same there. And Jason sent me a bizarre video, which I think, it's a shame, of course, this is radio, we can't see it, but it's a video which I think was taken in New York yesterday, and it's of Greta speaking using a microphone and pulling some very weird faces, and a camera is zooming in on her, and she's pulling some very weird and strange faces, like she's bewildered or something, I don't know. She does have autism there. So a lot of people listening to the programme are saying, yeah, don't blame Greta Thunberg, even though she's the face of this. Thanks for those tweets. There were lots of other tweets as well. Samantha tweets, I'm really enjoying listening to Mark. I've started reading a book called The European Union Collective by Christopher Story. It's a study in Russian and German strategy to complete Lenin's world revolution. Thanks for that, Samantha. I've not heard of that book, but I certainly will look it up there. Mark, the European Central Bank, the World Bank, the IMF, I've talked for many years. It's been one of my subjects of interest for many years, how countries were, kind of suckered into debt slavery so that we could be controlled centrally. How important is that agenda, the getting countries into debt? How important is that to the whole climate change, Agenda 20, Agenda 30 agenda?
Well, it's absolutely central, because the whole idea that Maurice Strong had in 1992, this billionaire who came out of the oil industry, who had a 200,000 acre ranch where him and Evelyn de Rothschild planned how they were going to do this by bringing in the new age. Well, actually, the bigger picture of that was that the World Bank was going to bankrupt countries. The whole point is that they go into the so-called third world. The destruction of the third world was through debt and debt management. Now, to bring everything down to the same level, what they need to do is collapse the industrialized West, which they've been doing. So in other words, you have to bring everything down to the same level to get totalitarianism. In other words, you can't have people who are in the middle classes. And that's what Maurice Strong was advocating. I'd like to just give you a quote here, Richie.
Yes,
this is from the 1992 United Nations Conservation, the actual Rio Earth Summit. It was that meeting in 1992. David Lang, a Montreal investment banker, called the public cannon fodder and requested the environmental hijacking be kept out of the public realm. In other words, the public didn't need to know this. What he actually said, and I've got a direct quote here, was, we have to take almost an elitist program that we can see beyond our swollen bellies and look to the future in time frames and results which are not easily understood or can be, with intellectual honesty, be reduced down to a kind of simplistic definition, which is where sustainable development came in, because that just means something good to most people. They don't know what it means. But basically, what he was saying is you have to keep the real agenda out of the public domain. Now, what you get is you have the real agenda and the public benefit. So that everything that's presented through this agenda has to be perceived by the public to be for their benefit, which is where the climate change agenda came from the Club of Rome, saying that the enemy of humanity was humanity itself. So this has been fairly cleverly constructed, but it's quite a simplistic idea when it comes down to it. But yes, the idea is a totalitarian management system. And in order to do that, you have to bankrupt countries that don't come into line or that you want to asset grab. And that's the whole point of the land grabs and the whole point of the World Wildlife Fund, the lending, to third world countries. But more importantly, Richie, the shadow government of all third world and indeed Western countries are non-governmental organizations. So in other words, the real governance that's going on is unstructured. So people say, oh, there's a world government. Well, that means something to people who know a bit about something called the New World Order. And to those who don't know what it means, it's a conspiracy theory. But again, it doesn't adequately describe the governance system, which is unstructured in the eyes of the public, which is why they will not look at videos such as enablers of Agenda 2030 and the World Government Summit. They'll say there is no world government, yet they won't look at a video from the World Government Summit and see what they're saying. And I've got all the quotes from that. And basically, there is no way out of this system in their view, that everything has to come under this new totalitarianism. And that does mean that all nations will be brought into line. For instance, the future in this country is massive power cuts. We had a little taste of that recently. I went to a conference several years ago with the people who actually supply the national grid. Would you like to hear about that, or is there something else you'd like to go into?
No, mate, this is massively important, Mark. Go ahead, mate. The floor is yours.
Oh, so myself and Piers Corbyn attended this conference. There are two companies in this country. One's called AXA, AKSA. The other is called Green Frog. They supply the national grid when the national grid is at peak capacity, and they charge the government really top prices for it. And they're businessmen and they're honest, and they will tell you this all day long. They said to me at the time, the future in this country is power cuts because the national grid is mainly at full capacity. That's when this system, which these two companies operate, kicks in. It's called the store system, STOR. And they posed the question to me was, we don't understand why the government is advertising renewables as the future when we know and they know that they don't work, and they can't work the way that they're being used presently. So, in other words, this whole idea of a green agenda is completely fake, because everything that backs up the national grid is the store system, which is diesel generators, mainly, with some gas generators. Diesel generators owned by companies in Saudi Arabia. They own the ones in Wales. They're owned by big corporations. They're buried all over the country, and the public don't know about them. Yet it's not a conspiracy theory. This is how the national grid is backed up. It's not backed up with renewable power. It's backed up with diesel generators.
That will come as news, I would imagine, to the vast majority of our audience. And that's being protected, that information, by the mainstream media in this country, isn't it?
I don't think it is, Richie.
No, you think they don't know?
They're not interested in it. I wouldn't say that there's a big conspiracy to cover it up. It's just that they get PR press releases, as you and I know, and they repeat. They need headlines. And basically, they're not really bothered what they're saying, because every story is pretty much the same. It's full of logical fallacies and untruths. So is there anything really sexy about the store system? No, there isn't. Is there anything really sexy and sensational about the two companies that basically supply the national grid? No, there isn't. They would be in specialist magazines, you see. So the public don't need to know about this stuff. Yet these people are completely open. So there's no great conspiracy to this. Everything's in the open. And these people were completely open with us, a couple of strangers who just asked them a few questions. And they said that all of this wind power and solar is not working. It could be made to work. But as Evelyn de Rothschild said in 1992, renewables won't work. He said it at that conference, Richie.
They're not working. They could be made to work, but they're not working. This is extraordinary stuff, but it's happening. Mark Windows is our guest. windowsontheworld.net. The talk that is going around the country is called The Bigger Picture. Mark mentioned Piers Corbyn there, Sandy Adams as well. I've spoken to people, I've heard from people who've been to it. It's travelling around the country. It's very impressive, very well put together, and it's mind-blowing stuff. I thought Piers did exceptionally well on talk radio very recently, basically destroying the myth that man-made CO2 is wreaking havoc on the climate. He did brilliantly. It's just a shame that he can't get picked up by the BBC or Sky or Channel 4, Mark, eh?
Well, there was a time when he could, but they seem to have closed that door now. And the great thing, though, Richie, is that between 2017, that is, and 2018, 860,000 people in this country cancelled their TV licence. That was slightly up on the years 15 to 16.
Right? Wow.
So that's quite encouraging.
Yeah, it is encouraging, isn't it? I mean, I don't have a TV licence, and I have a very reasonable explanation and a rational explanation as to why I don't have one. I don't ever tell other people what to do, and I know you don't either. What people do is their own business, and they are responsible for themselves only. But I do remember covering Piers Corbyn's experience of Nicky Campbell on The Big Question a couple of years ago, which is absolutely wretched, where Campbell basically assumed the role of joining in with Friends of the Earth. And at one stage, when Piers gave a very plausible and very scientific answer to a question, Campbell looked away from Piers, looked towards Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth and said, and I quote, "See, this is what you have to deal with." I didn't write, I complained about it. Never received a response. I said Campbell is supposed to be the impartial presenter, the impartial referee. He's not there to say to the audience or to other participants even, you see what you're dealing with. He's supposed to say, right, you've heard what Piers Corbyn has said, debunk him. Dreadful stuff, Mark. But that's a great number of people, that nearly 900,000 people have said no. And it's not, you don't reckon it's because of, various reasons. The BBC programming is crap anyway. It's one reality TV show after another. You think that maybe Brexit, maybe the BBC's obvious bias, you think, is responsible for much of the dissent, for much of those who decide not to pay their licence fees anymore. You think it might be because people are waking up, Mark?
I think what it is that the propaganda has become too obvious.
Yeah.
And propaganda, when it becomes too obvious, has no effect. So the BBC keep using kind of brainless propaganda with brainless people like the person you're talking about. And when you have no balance whatsoever and just one agenda being pushed, it's not clever, because the art of propaganda is being able to mix the truth and lies together. Now, what they've done is they've turned into kind of a totalitarian broadcasting system, which cannot ultimately survive, because, yes, Brexit did split things, and it has had pretty remarkable effect in waking up a lot of the general public to what is going on. And the obvious bias of the BBC has been caught out time and time again. And yes, people are generally a bit sick of it. However, they still put that television on when they get home from work. And for things to truly change, you have to stop watching it altogether, because when you stop watching it altogether, something else kicks in. And that's the ability to start looking at things critically. And I say this to anybody who watches television, because the whole idea of television and the way that pictures are put over words is to create propaganda and to push an agenda. And unless the public realise that, but realise it internally, then it's extremely difficult for them to separate the facts from the lies. But yes, it's a very encouraging thing, and I would encourage more people to do it. But as you say, Richie, we don't tell anybody what to do.
No.
I haven't watched television for 50 years.
You don't bother with it. And you make a good point as well. The propaganda isn't coming into your house at 1 o'clock, at 6 o'clock and at 9 o'clock. It's coming through your dramatic programming, your serials, your serial dramas, your children's programs. It's very subliminal, this stuff, because all of these programs are dealing with these issues, and in a less obvious way are planting these suggestions and are framing in people's minds what's happening, whether people realise it or not. So you make a very good point there about switching off altogether, and again, whether you do or whether you don't pay for your TV licence is none of my business. And like Mark reiterated there, I wouldn't tell you what to do, because there can be implications for not paying your TV licence if you're not careful. There's no doubt about that. Mark Windows is our guest, windowsontheworld.net. So, my friend, the talk has been hugely successful. I know this. It's massively successful. Where is it going next? Give us some ideas. Let us know where you're going to be in the coming weeks and in the coming months, because I know you're going to be in our neck of the woods, and you've been connecting me to people that I'm very interested in as well. Where are you off to in the next few weeks?
Okay, I can give you a few dates here, Richie. Sunday the 15th of September, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're at Singleton Village Hall, 6 The Lays, Singleton, Chichester, West Sussex. That's PO 18 0HR. And you contact a lady called Janie Still. That's Janie, JANIESTILL at sky.com. And that's just £10 for the whole day.
Brilliant.
Which is about 6 hours. And then we all have a little bit of a conference afterwards. And it often spills over into local establishments. And it's a lot of fun. So the thing is about this information, Richie, is it's not all doom and gloom. It's just information. And there are some very humorous sides to what's going on, which we started to capitalize on now. And the whole thing is that, yes, once propaganda is this crude, which is what it is, it's incredibly crude, the propaganda now, then it's very easy to see through it. So that's encouraging. September the 21st, let's go there, Saffron Walden Village Hall, which is in Essex. It's 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Debden Village Hall in Saffron Walden. And there's a free car park there. So bring your vehicles, you can drive. It's £10 for the whole day again. And you can email Debden Bigger Picture, all one, lowercase, at gmail.com. And there's an Eventbrite bookings page for that. So that's September the 21st in Saffron Walden. Saturday, October the 5th, we're in Cheltenham, 12 till 6 p.m. at Cheltenham Bowling Club, Suffolk Square, Cheltenham, GL52DX, again, tenner for the whole day. Saturday, 24th of October, St. Dogmaels Hall, that's Dog, Dogmaels Hall, Maes Hyfryd, St. Dogmaels, Pembrokeshire, SA43 3ES, that's £10 on the door again. And you can go to St. Dogmaels, that's dogmaels.co.uk. 14th of October, I'm doing a talk on my own in Lytham St. Anne's. It's called Natural Law in a Post-Truth World. Basically, about the way truth and facts are contrary to the current post-truth world and the role of natural law in combating the sort of entirely corrupted and ever more controlling system and how this can bring remedy. So that's a bit of fun of how you can deal with local authorities. I'm going to go through some of my court cases, some of the things I've done and some remedies. And basically what the bigger picture of this is about, Richie, because it all comes down to natural law, which is left out of this system. And natural law is the only real law. It's the law that everyone knows is intrinsically right. But because they've been mentored out of it and into a system, they don't have any natural law anymore. And this is where everything starts to change, I think.
I don't doubt it. WindowsOnTheWorld.net. Just before, and we've got a few minutes left, we're not under any pressure. We're not under any pressure. I'll read a couple of more tweets, and I want to ask you a little bit about 5G. John Parsons is in Salford. John, how you doing? After 2 years of being told by self-righteous, polished presenters is that I am a racist, Neanderthal Brexiteer, I decided I no longer wish to contribute to the wages of these people who obviously despise me. Now they just send me stupid, threatening letters, says John. Cheers for that, John. Look, I won't labour the point. It's a huge issue. Fifth generation mobile technology. A lot of people are worried about it. I've had some learned men and women on the show talking about it. I've had Chris Busby on and others who know this field very well. They say it's very dangerous. There are very serious human health implications. Do you think it might also be used, 5G, in a kind of a surveillance capacity as part of this agenda that you've been describing for the last hour, Mark? 5G, what do you think? Have we lost Mark Bree? We might have lost him briefly. That's okay. We'll get him back on. We'll see what's happened there.
It's an
I'll tell you what, we've lost you momentarily. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect you. Hang on there, hang on. Sometimes you can clear the line by disconnecting, and then by reconnecting, the line magically improves. That's the way it goes. Jordan did that yesterday, didn't he? I just plugged out the mic, Richie, plugged it back in, and it was better. Sorry, Mark, there you are. Just said we'd disconnect and reconnect to see could we get a better line. I'm hoping it's better now. Yeah, I was asking about 5G. Did you hear what I said before we proceed there?
It's a massive part of the incoming overall agenda with the smart cities and Internet of Things controlling, because obviously it's a huge step up from 4G.
BG.
A lot of this and the implications. And the great thing about what's happened is that the 5G issue has kind of got into the public consciousness. The problem with it is that it's being kind of put across as though it's just 5G. No, 5G is an integrated part of a rollout of a technocratic system. It's not one thing on its own. It's just merely a part of the control structure. So, yes, there are huge problems coming in the future, according to many health professional, and we've done quite a lot of shows on this, and you can look at, there's some very good documentation out there. And what's happened with the 5G thing is that it's been taken on by local councils as though they've got some concern or even ability to do anything about this. And of course, they haven't. The contracts were signed in 2017. Companies like Arqiva putting 16,500 of these new hubs for 5G into boroughs. And that was in one London borough, North East London. Now, every London borough has done the deals. Every borough in the country has done the deals. Now, there's this kind of show that, in other words, that we're going to stop 5G. Well, no, it's already been implemented. However, there is a possibility to start holding people accountable, but certainly not using things like the precautionary principle, which goes right back into protecting it. So basically, there's some really interesting stuff happening with 5G, but I think it has to be seen as part of the bigger agenda: driverless cars, the Internet of Things, and the control system generally as part of UN Agenda 2030. And I know quite a lot of people who are doing really good work within this and putting out some great information. The major problem, I would say, is that some of the high-end stuff, which I agree with, it is a weapons system, can be used as a weapons system. It was defined as a weapons system by the Soviets in 1997, and you can look at millimeter wave technology and what it is, because the hubs are using millimeter waves. So basically, you are looking at something which can be used as a weapons system, such as the active denial system, which is used against protesters. Basically, you beam these millimeter waves at groups of people at very high density, and they start to get burning on the skin, physical burning, and they have to run away. So that's called the active denial system. Now, the thing is that the public are going to go, they wouldn't do that. Well, we don't know really about the whole implementation of this because it's in its initial stages. Yes, it is good that people are opposing it, though, Richie.
It is good that people are opposing it. And look, I'll ask you a final question, Mark. And good to have you back today. Thanks for giving us the time today. windowsontheworld.net for tickets to see the bigger picture. When you see technology, when you see Black Mirror by Charlie Brooker, which is a fantastic show, and I just want to just finish on this whole idea of social credit. And there's a couple of terrific episodes of that particular drama series, futuristic drama series by Charlie Brooker, which showed a world in the future where people were terrified of falling foul of a social crediting system because it meant they wouldn't be able to do things, go around, get from A to B, travel, go to concerts or whatever. And we've seen aspects of this already in China. Is that something that we have to watch out for here, Mark? Is that coming here, do you think? A social crediting system where people will be isolated or prevented from doing things because they're not doing what they should do for the greater good. What do you think?
Yes, that's all the common good, social equity, social justice. That's exactly what it's all about. Mentoring you into this system where if you deem yourself to be different or you deem yourself to be outside it, you can be cut off completely. And that is already happening. Obviously, you can see signs of it. But I would say, in short, Richie, yes, that is the plan, which is why it's extremely important for people to understand what currency really is. Currency is our energy, and we are giving our energy to this system. This system is about harvesting energy. And the whole point of being able to see through this is being able to know that and stop letting that system harvest your energy, work with people you know, barter amongst them, use cash as much as possible between everyone you know, and try and stay out of it. It's extraordinarily difficult to do. But the only future I can see outside of this system is small communities sort of working together. Now, that might sound a bit idealistic, but I know places where it's actually happening. And I think that the idea of this collectivism, we have to get out of collectivism of the hive mind, but we can work as in small collectives, but as individuals. And I put that very strongly in the talks. But yes, rather convoluted way of answering your first question. But yes, that's exactly what it's about. It's about a control and management system that you are not allowed to be outside of, which is totalitarian.
Do me a favour, thanks for that, mate. Do me a favour, drop Sandi a text and ask her to get in touch with me. I'd like to bring her back on the programme by herself. I'm not trying to virtue signal here, but I don't get as many female guests as I do male, and I think there's no harm in having a little bit of balance. Do that if you don't mind, mate. Thanks for your time today. To find tickets for the Bigger Picture talk, which lasts for 6 hours, and it's exceptionally presented by Mark, by Sandy Adams and by Piers Corbyn, go to windowsontheworld.net and check it out and support this excellent research and investigative journalism. Thanks for your time today, mate. Really appreciate it. Continued success to you, and the programme is excellent. windowsontheworld.net for archived programmes, Windows on the World, and where you can catch the next episode as well. Cheers, Mark.
Thanks, Richie. That was great. We got through a lot there. Cheers. Thanks.
We did, mate. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Mark Windows live on the line there from his home this afternoon. Great stuff. And I will ask him on again in the very near future to talk about, he said there that it is happening in some communities. Obviously, he expected me to jump in there, didn't you? And say, where, Mark? But running out of time, and he's got another engagement. So I will get into that with him in the near future. Jean Ann was on to me to tell me the 5G thing is very sneaky in Ireland. It's happening in Ireland, but there isn't a word about it, says Jean Ann. Now, it's funny because here in the UK, there is news stories, or there are news stories, Richie. There are news stories, but generally just basic factual stories saying that it's coming here, it's coming there, it's happening here, it's happening there. The stories are there. And the BBC did one story about 5 or 6 weeks ago where it asked the question, is 5G really safe? And what did the BBC do? It quoted a couple of people from a couple of universities saying, yes, it's 100% fine, don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. But that's all we've had. As for the social crediting thing, I must point out here that Hayden Hewitt, my friend and colleague, erstwhile colleague, who was one of the co-founders of liveleak.com, that huge behemoth website, very important website. Hayden believes, and when he said it, I was thinking about it and I agree with him, that a social crediting system, a punitive system, right, punishing and correcting, I had to correct him, correcting people who deviate from the herd, will be implemented by corporations and by the social media companies, not by governments. And when he said that, I thought, yeah, he's onto something there. By the way, speaking of people whom we know, I want to give a mention to none other than the brilliant Johnny Vedmore. Johnny Vedmore is a brilliant journalist. He's a musician as well. Johnny was on the programme recently talking about Jeffrey Epstein and some links to Epstein and some of the people connected to Epstein and some of the very worrying initiatives and agendas that they're involved in, right? Johnny's following up this story on theswamp.media. Go to theswamp.media for the latest from Johnny Vedmore, who's a terrific writer, by the way. And if Johnny's got a bit of time next week, I think I should invite him back on the programme. I think I'll definitely be doing that. Hi to Himanshi, just outside Delhi in India. How you doing, our kid? Nice to know you're listening to the programme this week. People only look at one perspective, Richie, she says. Wow, 5G is here, super speeds, new technology, wonderful. What they don't see is how harmful it is. They will follow anything because that's the trend. You're absolutely right, Himanshi. But of course, they don't get any information. They don't receive any information. Listen to Sky News again today. Listen back to the monologue of this programme. You have Kay Burley reading a press release from the World Health Organization as if it is news, talking about how contagious misinformation is around vaccines. Wow. That will be applied to everything. Misinformation about 5G. And that leads to an eventuality whereby people won't even get information on Facebook, nor will they get it on Pinterest, nor will they get it on Instagram. They won't get information. The challenge is the established thinking around Wi-Fi waves, non-ionizing radiation, which is deadly for people. It is deadly for people. Overexposure to it is deadly. But they won't get that information, Himanshi. They won't get it. It won't be there. Because it's going to be deemed as dangerous. That information is dangerous. Burley said, and don't think for a minute that Kate Burley thought up all by herself the line that misinformation is more contagious than the vaccine itself. Kate Burley is not stupid, but she's not that creative. She didn't come up with that catch line. It was given to her. And you will hear that a lot in the coming weeks and months. Misinformation is contagious. It's more contagious than the sickness, the illness itself. People won't see it. So when I get pissed off when, like this morning, I'm walking down Liverpool Street. Fucking Liverpool Street. What do we have a street in Manchester called Liverpool Street for? And it doesn't even go to Liverpool. What's going on? Maybe it did years ago. Maybe it did years ago. Liverpool Street. Anyway, Scouse. We love the Scousers, let's be honest about it. The non-Liverpool FC supporting Scousers, we love them. Cliff Moore. I originally found out about etheric energy from Mark. Or etheric energy from Mark. There are ways in which we can help this planet. John Byrne says, how you doing, John? 5G will decimate the population. It is an absolutely central to the AGW agenda, says John Byrne. It's going to have a profound impact on people. Negatively, a profound impact on us and on our health. Of course it is. But all discussion of that online will eventually be swept under the online carpet, for want of a better word. The cybersphere carpet. It won't be seen, you see. Won't be seen. It's why I'm reluctant to upload to YouTube anymore. Because while the videos get 5,000-6,000 views, they used to get 25, 30, 40,000 on YouTube before the channel was deleted and before the new channel was shadow banned. Waste of time. YouTube now ensures that the only people who hear these programs on YouTube are people who would get them anyway. People who would go out of their way to get them. People who wouldn't go out of their way to get them will not see my program or other programs in their or on their YouTube homepage. This is what's going on. This is what's going on. And I'm reluctant to be involved with it. It sickens me. Every single day, the Richie Allen Show is uploaded to YouTube at an enormous amount of time expense to me. And what happens? It immediately demonetizes it. Before anybody has even fucking listened to it. Demonetized. Demonetized. Gone. Gone. Because it's been deemed to be, and they've admitted this themselves, Google, it's deemed to be subversive. Subversive. Fake news. You get fake news on the Richie Allen Show. Subversive. So let him publish it if he wants. We'll make sure nobody sees it. So that's a long-winded response to Himanshi. Young men and women don't ever come across information about non-ionizing radiation. Never. They will never come across Ilana Freeland. Never. They will never hear of Nick Begovic. Never. Never. Very unlikely. I can't say never. It's ridiculous. I can't say never. But the chances are very remote. And even if it happened across their timeline, how likely is it that they will click on it? And how likely is it that they will stay with it? In other words, if they come across an interview with, for example, Ilana Freeland, as I just mentioned, what's the likelihood that they will listen and carry on listening? Because feelings trump facts. Well, I love my new Samsung S14 Plus smartphone that you can fold in half and that you can phone the fucking moon with. I love it. So I'm not listening to this shit. Cognitive dissonance, Jordan said it yesterday. Love that theory by Jordan Maxwell, that somewhere along the line, those behind these agendas created a program and infused us with the feeling of, oh, that's crazy shit, that. They're mad, them. Somebody mentions weird creatures that have never been documented. Somebody mentions Bigfoot. Instantaneously, you go, what a crock of shit that is. Absolutely rubbish. Oh, give over. Without even thinking about it. And truthfully, whether you believe in Bigfoot or not, and I don't know anything about Bigfoot, your natural instinct shouldn't be to go to exclaim, what a crock of shite. It should be naturally, your instinct should naturally be to, tell us a bit more about that there now. So you're telling me some sort of hangover species, some sort of tall, kind of half man, kind of half ape, I don't know what it is. Tell me about that. Give us some inclination as to why you are interested in that. Is there any evidence? Who wrote about it? No, the automatic reaction is, it's fucking rubbish. You know, that's the conditioning. That's where we are, I think. And so I don't know. It's mad. It's mad. BitChute, says Jean Ann. There's another one. You're going to see more and more and more of this. You're going to see more and more news presenters doing interviews with people who say that it is very important to take down misinformation or fake news. Who will be the arbiter? Who or what will be the arbiter? I venture the guess that in the near future, artificial intelligence will be the arbiter of what is fake and what is true. Isn't that scary? But that's what's going to happen. Artificial intelligence. It's already happening. Algorithms on YouTube instantaneously take down the ads from a program like mine to prevent me making any money with it. I know you're going to say some ads show up. They do, but we get nothing out of it. What did we get last month? £80, I think, for a month. This month, it's a lot less. The month before, it's nothing. And it's either to disencourage you from uploading, full stop, which in the case, if that is the case, well, it's working because I'm getting tired of uploading to YouTube. Because it takes a lot of my time. And I don't have a lot of time. As a sole content creator, chief cook, bottle washer, editor, producer, sound editor, presenter, I don't have any time for it. For no gain. And the program exists only through advertising, which I have none at the moment, obviously, and your support. So it's a waste of my fucking time. Right? Oh, well, I only listen on YouTube. Well, fuck you, I don't care. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on Podomatic. Get off your lazy arse and find the program somewhere else. You lazy bastard. Because every time I talk about not using YouTube, I get this. Oh, don't take it off of YouTube. I only listen to it. Well, fuck off, you selfish bastard. Fuck right off. Right? Really cheeses me off, that. You know, 16 hours a day doing this thing. And you kick off if I threaten not to put it on YouTube. Well, YouTube is no good to me. It's no good to you either. It's garbage. It's preventing people from seeing the program. Ironically, well, I watch it there, so it couldn't be. Yes, but they know that you are alive to the program anyway. And that you'll find it anyway. So they don't care. Nearly 100,000 subscribers 18 months ago. Bang, they deleted the channel. This channel reached 23,000 subscribers in 2 days and stopped dead. It was record-breaking pace. The latest Richie Allen YouTube channel, which has got 24,000 subscribers now, which for most people is very big, but for me it's a joke. 23,000 it got in 2 days, and then it stopped stone fucking dead because they prevent people from listening to it. And I'm not important at all. I have no importance, but it's a platform that's decent and it's interesting, and the people who come on it are interested. So it has to be stopped. It has to be stopped. And you bitch then if I say I'm getting off YouTube, which I'm working up to. You know? Did I see the Project Veritas interview with the Google whistleblower? I did. I can't remember the name of the whistleblower, but I did. Yes. They're just admitting it. They're not even denying it, that it's going on. You know? E. Michael Jones has been talking a lot about it lately as well. What they're doing. They're not even hiding it. They're telling you, yes, we are the biggest thing in the world. We are now the world's media. Yes, we are. And we will tell you what you can and what you can't watch. And we will prevent you watching things for your own good by hiding them so they won't show up in your timeline. This is totalitarianism on steroids. And I'll say I've had enough of it because there's nothing in it for me, for the programme, for the future of the programme, and people bitch and cry and moan about it. Give me a break. Anyway, lovely stuff. Right, that's pretty much it. I've got nothing else to say, so I'm going to go now. I know I'm 10 minutes early, but I'm going to go anyway. I'm going to play a tune and leave you and love you. Really brilliant to have Mark Windows on the programme again today. windowsontheworld.net is Mark's website. You'll find tickets there for the bigger picture. That talk with Piers Corbyn, Sandy Adams, fascinating, important, hugely important, but very well put together by the crew there. So check it out if you can. I'm going to go and leave you with Lionel Richie and All Night Long. The next time we speak will be Sunday morning on Sunday View, which I'll be presenting at 11 o'clock, looking through the Sunday newspapers as usual. Thanks to all my guests this week. Thanks very much to you for listening. Really appreciate it. Bye for now. Have a fantastic weekend. See you soon. Bye. Bye.